Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in again. Today we're going to take a look at how the best players in the world play with such power and control, yet it seems so easy to them. We're going to touch upon some sequencing elements, look at how we could use that internal system, the fascial system, to create a good amount of stretch, be more dynamic, and hopefully present you with some ideas to help you to integrate some of that power and control, some of that ease to your own game. So I'm excited to share this one with you all. I've got a good feeling about this being helpful for a number of players out there. The idea for this video came from an online lesson I was giving. Towards the end of this video, I'm going to share an exercise or a drill, you could call it, that I designed for the player to use when they're at home or at the golf course. So stay tuned towards the end of the video where I share that feel. Okay, so let's discuss the sequencing elements to consider to get that more powerful, more control move through the shot. So let's start with down the line, and we're going to focus today mostly on transition into impact. So from the top, a couple of checkpoints I like to use with players when looking on camera. You could also use yourself as the player looking back into a mirror. From the top into delivery position, are we getting to a position where we can see the left pec in the mirror? So for a tour player, often there's a badge there that you can use as a reference. Can we see that from down the line? And at the same time, can we see the back of almost the left butt or the left hip there appearing in the mirror? So we're getting that nice stretch. I can feel the stretching across my torso, really good there already, just by focusing on that particular position right there. And then from face on, just one element to consider while you're in that position. Well, a couple of elements to consider really, I won't get into too much detail, is that while you're in that position there, making sure to keep a nice amount of flex in that left knee, because what you're going to need that for is that when you've got here where you feel like you're really stretched, you're going to push off the ground, and that's going to allow me to get really open really quickly. And that's what you see with a lot of tour players. They'll be in this position here where it's looking like the chest is pointed down and behind, then they push off the ground, and all of a sudden they're nicely open through the shot. Other thing to consider, just because I see it as a common mistake that players make when working on this, is that when coming down, just make sure you don't do too much of this here. So essentially you could use almost the shoulders as a reference. We want it more that way. Okay, so there's a couple of checkpoints to use that I find you'd have to do a good job with your sequencing to achieve that delivery position. Let's move on to the fascial system, how we can achieve those internal stretches. And even there doing that exercise, trust me, you'll feel a good amount of stretch, and you'll also probably get a little bit of awareness around how, if the body moves well, it just elastically moves well, and not too stiff, not too tight, all that stuff. You're just gonna have more chance of hitting good golf shots. Okay, so for the internal stretches, I'm going to refer to a piece of data that we get on the 3D system, the pelvis lead hand stretch. So we've seen a good amount of correlation to maxing that particular value out, or a higher value there, relating to more distance. Okay, so obviously if we can create more distance, it allows you to almost play with a little bit more ease. Okay, so let me show you this one first from face on actually. So from the top into this position here. So while we're creating this position here that we're going to make sure that the lead hip is pushing, still pulling up and open, the rib cage is pulling up and open, but from a lead hand position, we want to make sure that it's not getting pulled along with it. So that's a common error that you'll see in a lot of amateurs, and I find this comes from being too tight through the lats and some other areas of the body. Okay, so from the top here, they'll be moving into downswing then, because they don't have the ability to stretch enough moving into the shot there, because they're a little bit tight. The hands will get pulled a little bit out in front there, or from face on, they'll get like a little narrow this way. Okay, so a couple of things you could look at there, just roll your lats, or with a foam roller, or look at just some stretches just to kind of loosen yourself up through your system there. But essentially what we're looking to achieve is, can we be pulling open with that hip, with the rib cage there, and keep the hands in a position here where they almost feel as though they're just outside, or even just at least on that trail foot there. Okay, from down the line, that's gonna look something like this. Yeah, just like that. And again, making sure that those shoulders are not getting that way while we're doing that drill. So we're trying to create as much stretch as we can from that lead hip all the way through to that lead hand. And that there, as I mentioned before, has a good correlation to creating speed and distance. Okay, so the exercise that I gave to the player to work on was, we don't actually need a club, was to, and again I'll show you face on first, was to just get into your sets up position, move your lead arm to a top of backswing, and take your right arm and almost cup your hands so the back of the hands are together, and then with a good sequence, letting the pelvis go first, then stretching through the rib cage, I'm going to feel as though I'm pulling this back of this left hand into the right hand. And you can see the elbow of my right hand is in front of my right hip, something that I'm a really big advocate of moving into the shot here. One thing I forgot to cover with the club down the line is that it's really important as well to have those hands positioned in a nice spot there. We don't want the hands getting too much out in front or too much behind, because then that's going to cause some manipulation to square the face through the shot, just because the club head will be out of position. Okay, so in here, back to the drill. Feeling like we're getting a good amount of stretch. I'm pulling the back of the left hand into the back of the right. I find this also helps with achieving a nice little bowed lead wrist there, moving into the shot. So that's the drill then. I'm pushing, I'm pushing, I'm pushing, and that gives me a good sensation. Next thing I would do then is, after doing maybe one of those, is to grab your club, work on the same sensation there, making sure the hands are in a good position, going over the same checkpoints that I've discussed already. And then finally, it feels like a little bit of a workout just going through those exercises and those feels. Finally, let's move in and see if we can do it on the ball. Yeah, not a bad one there. I got to admit though, I feel like in better swings, I feel like I've created a little bit more stretch, and the timing feels a little longer from the top into about here when I get my really good strikes. Okay, so that's something you might find yourself if you're working on this. Okay, so couple of things there to consider to help you to play with more power, more ease. The control comes from, if you're getting that nice rotation to the shot, it's going to typically reduce the manipulation of the face. So I hope you find those tips helpful for your game.